So Terence is a former colleague of mine from way back when, 1995, I think.
Correct.
He was born in Jamaica. He's got a PhD in environmental science and engineering, worked at the EPA for the past 27 years, currently lives in Las Vegas, and generally speaking, he's a hydrogeologist and a goat farmer.
They go together?
They go together. So with that, let's get started. So, Terence, tell us about the goats.
Oh, well, yeah, I started raising, I had goats when I was a kid, when I was going to school. It's a thing in Jamaica where people, we like to eat goat meat, so if you have a few in the backyard, it kind of makes access kind of easy. So I had goats growing up in high school. And then
I'm sorry to interrupt. When you say it makes it easy, you just go in the back, chop some meat off, eat it, let them walk away?
Yeah, it grows back.
Yeah,
it's sustainable. You think he slaughtered his own goats?
It's got a name. It's a pet.
But that's a good question. Like when you were a kid, did you slaughter goats?
No, I've never slaughtered. I slaughtered goats once in my life, and that's a story we could go into, and that is never going to happen again.
Why not?
I was at Virginia Tech doing my doctorate, and another Jamaican buddy of mine was there, and we wanted goat meat. We were like, man, we need some goat meat. So we found a farm, a local farm. So we went there to get some goat meat. And we paid for the goat. And the guy.
Now, what did this redneck do when he saw two Jamaicans coming?
He wanted our money. Okay. So he handed us the goat and the machete. And we were like looking at each other like, we got to make our own goat meat. And so we draw straws, and I end up on the short end of the straw. And so we proceeded to tie this goat up and try to seriously.
Was it just out in the middle of the
seen
field?
It done before?
Yes,
okay.
yes. I'd seen it done before. I kind of knew what I was doing, but never done it before. It's a whole different story. So you started to cut the animals. It's a little gross, but I'm going to tell it anyway.
Whoa, let's go on to the next section, please.
Was there a slaughter? It's funny.
Was there a slaughterhouse?
No,
no
in the
slaughterhouse.
farmer's backyard. So, so I thought I had done the job. So we let the goat down, and the goat got up.
Oh God!
Wow. His neck looking. And anyway, long story short.
Why are you doing this to me?
It's a miracle.
Long story short, we finished the job, shared the meat, and I went home.
Wait.
And I couldn't eat any of it.
You missed the step there.
Hands off the table.
It's walking around after you thought
No,
you
it stood
killed
up.
it.
It wasn't walking around.
Okay, it
with
stood
its
up.
neck ajar.
No, what did you do then?
We
Tackled it?
Sequestered it again and finished the job.
How?
Tied back up on the tree and have it
Oh
hanging.
God!
And was it fighting at this
Yeah,
point?
well, it was. But
It hadn't bled out, though.
And
No,
you're
it
not a
was bleeding.
vegetarian now?
But you said in Jamaica you had them in the back. So
We never-
what did you do with them, or
we
someone
usually
else was
sell them.
killing
We
them?
usually sell them to a butcher.
just-
We never done that. So, long story short is I got all this meat, went back home, and the goat was giving me nightmares. I would wake up and the goat was chasing me down with his head ajar.
Oh, like Jim Brewer on Saturday Night Live doing the goat boy? Oh my God, that's brutal.
When is a goat neck not a neck? When it's a jar.
I couldn't eat any of the meat. I ended up giving it all away. So that was my only
Vegan for 30 years, keep counting, right?
that was my only time trying to slaughter animals.
So-
That was never anything, and I'll never do that again.
What happened to the goat meat then?
I gave it away. I had other friends who weren't there, who wanted it from Africa or wherever else, and they were too happy to take it off me.
And you didn't tell them the story first. You just gave them
I
told him the story later. I told him the story later.
And no one was there to tell him, you don't know where that goat's been.
You don't know what the goat's been through. So anyway, going back to my growing up as a kid, we had goats around. We never killed them, but we would sell them off and stuff like that. We had a little farm, so that was my little chore. I had my own herd of goats. And when I was going off to college, I sold them off, some of them anyway, to buy stuff to go to college. And then later on, when I came to the U.S. and started working, and I had moved on, my brother, I had a younger brother who was still in Jamaica. And, he wanted something to do. He wasn't doing very well. So I was like, what do you want to do? And he was like, I want to raise goats. So that's how I got back into it, investing in my brother. Long story short, it didn't work out so well. And he took off, went back to England where he was born. and left me with a bunch of goats.
Wow. Can you get milk from the goats? Also?
Yes. You can. There are two types of goats. There are the ones that you raise for meat, and they're called meat goats, obviously. And then the dairy goats that you raise for milk.
I thought there was two types, like a male and a female.
That's one taxonomical classification.
They're actually all male.
You can't get milk from all of them.
Believe it or not, the males give milk sometime. Yes.
And
Right?
an
Yes.
interesting fact: human males can do that as well.
Yes. Especially the dairy breeds. The males do give milk. Not a lot, but they do give milk sometimes. So be careful. Yeah.
I'm not saying that from
careful about
personal
the milk you're
experience,
drinking.
but I am saying that from one of those strange facts you remember that you know, saw on
There you go. Yeah.
Discovery Channel or
Yeah.
something.
So it's never binary 0-1. You know, there's a little bit of gray area there. Yeah. So that's how I ended up raising goats, and then I took it.
I'm sorry to interrupt. What did the goats teach you about hydrogeology? How did you?
Well, they teach me a lot about not hydrogeology per se, but maybe about how to manage waste. So in the environmental space, because they do poop a lot, they eat a lot, they poop a lot, and they pee a lot.
Fertilizer?
Fertilizer, yeah. So that was like a spin-off of the business where you would generate, manure, and people would come and buy it. Vegetable farmers, marijuana farmers in particular. It's really good for in Jamaica. So
That's some good.
yeah, that's some good. Yeah, in Jamaica is some good.
How many goats do you have?
At one point, I had up to 400. I don't have any now.
400.
I had like 400. Wow. And I would import animals from I didn't import them, but there are people who would import animals from the U.S. So it had like special pedigree animals. And those you could, so I was mainly selling breed stock.
So are you doing this on a large residential area?
Well,
Backyard.
It's in his neighbor's backyard, actually.
Well, we had a farm. My family had a farm of about 8 acres.
Oh, okay.
And all around the area was like farms. There were like 15-acre lots, and my grandfather had a 15-acre lot, but we got rid of half of it, or roughly half of it. And but eventually everything, it became a residential area. So everybody sold their lots, just like here, and lotted them up. And we kept ours. So we were the only farm there. So everybody wanted to, what is this goat farm doing? You moved beside a goat farm. We didn't move beside you. We're going to shut you down. We're going to the health department. I'm like, no, you're not going to shut us down. You got it. And the health department came, tried to chase us out. Like,
Does Jamaica have like a right to farm law similar to the States?
I'm not sure how the laws go. I don't know what that is.
They don't have
But
laws.
if you're a farm and you're existing there, they can't throw you out.
Nice.
You
Sounds like a right to farm law.
They got to, so your grandfather didn't, so to speak.
Isn't it funny how Ray lured you in here thinking about, you're talking about 3D, hydrogeomodeling, mod flow, contaminant transport, dilution, dispersion, and we're talking about goat shit.
Talking about goats, yeah.
No surprise.
So I did that, and it's a passion of mine actually. So, but it's hard to do that stuff when you're not there. The guys take you for a ride. They know you come there for twice a year, and you kick up a storm, and you work every day. Every
Wait, hold
hour.
on. This farm was in Jamaica?
Yes.
Oh, I thought it was in Las Vegas with you.
No.
All right, that makes
The
more
goats
sense.
stripped also. In fact, they were running around naked the whole time.
Hitting the strip.
It's okay. It's Vegas.
So the guys were kind of taking me for a ride, and so eventually I went down there this December. I'd given them a lot of opportunities, threatened them to close it down, and I threatened them so many times so they think it probably never going to happen.
Is this
right?
family or employees at this point?
Employees. My brother was gone. My dad had gotten old. He ran the farm for a while, and so his farm, but mine was separate, but kind of the same. How that family thing, wasn't clear distinction. So I threatened to close it down a number of times, and I never did. So they thought it would never happen. So I went down there this December, and I was like, enough is enough. That's it. So I sold them out.
Do you think you can run that kind of farm here in the U.S.?
Yes, you could. Oh yeah, as a matter of fact, it's all. I was in Alabama last weekend, where it's a big deal. A goat can sell for $50,000.
You are a brave man.
And you had 400. That's like
No.
$20.
Don't do the math like that. It's like a goat. Like a goat, not my goats. But I've seen goats. I bought a goat for $5,000.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've seen goats, other people buy goats for like 7,000, 8,000. I know of goats sold for like 30, 20, 40.
What makes a $30,000 goat different than
pedigree.
500?
It's pedigree.
Want some goat contest?
Yes, that too.
All right.
Yeah, you do have goat contest.
Best in show.
Best in show, and his bloodline. You know, it's all breeding and pedigree and what is considered valuable economically. Like for example, if animals come from a milk line that has the record, or 4, 5, 6 top 10 milkers this year in the U.S., then their offspring will go for at a premium. With meat goats, it's more like growth rate, that kind of stuff. Weight at weaning, weight at 1 year, that kind of thing. The one that's the fastest converter of feed to meat, will get an advantage. And then there are ways to look at the animal's size. Its width, it's 3 dimensions. The more meat, the longer, box, width, height, length. So the longer the animal, the wider the animal, the deeper the animal.
Who would be the most expensive goat in his room?
Meat goat? Well, let's
Milking goat, obviously.
Next question.
All right.
So
it does make you wonder, though, who is the goat among goats?
Who is the greatest of all time in this group? Let me see.
I mean, depending on the goat, $32,000 is pretty cheap. I think it costs you a little more to get Tom out of retirement for that. All right, a question. So where are you in your goat farming / hydrogeological career, and what's next?
Okay, well, I'm still helping out. It's a passion of mine. The goat thing is a passion of mine. So I still help out in the country. I work with other farmers, and I've always done this. Part of what I did when I was raising animals I'd see a young kid trying to start, and I would give him an animal. Like he'd have some like local stock, and he wants to upgrade it, and I would give him stock. I'd give to schools. And I sold most of them, I hope. So I'm still helping out in that realm and help farmers with organizing, getting stock from here to the U.S., helping with the logistics, that kind of deal. As far as career, I still work as an environmental scientist with EPA. I've been there, 20 plus years, and I've been having fun with that. Yeah.
How many weeks per year are you in Jamaica versus the States?
Well, of late, not a lot. And that's part of why it ran down, because then COVID, I didn't go there for 2 years during COVID, and I went there and my stock was like 20% of what I left it before COVID.
Any reason why you didn't want to travel? Just because of COVID?
Yeah, there was just too much hassle to travel. And because of COVID itself. Places were shut down, airports were shut down, so it wasn't really, it wasn't logic. It was infeasible almost.
What happened to 80% of your stock?
No, 20%. You said
80%.
Oh, you were down to 20%.
Down to 20%. I still don't get a question for that. I still don't have an answer for that.
They just disappeared, or they supposedly died?
Well, some might have died. Some might have
sold. Machete? Sold.
Some might have, yeah, all of the above. Whatever you can think. So while I was there, someone was selling out a herd, and I bought that herd to build my stock back up, and I gave them a chance. I said, when I'm back, I was hoping to go back the middle of last year. It didn't work out. My passport expired up here, and it took a while to get everything was backlogged. So by the time I went down there, was a year later, and it hadn't improved. So I just made a decision to stop using $1 to chase 10 cents.
Got it. So back to Adam's question, right? So goats and hydrogeology, right? How is the hydrogeology field for you? What are you up to?
It's pretty good. I work as a scientist for the EPA, and I work in a lot of troubleshooting of sites. So a site is like cleaning up contamination. So when stuff is not going good, that's when they usually call me in.
And this is groundwater
contamination. I work mainly with petroleum products, light, call it light non-aqueous phase liquids that floats on water. And I also work with and I work with the dense non-aqueous fluid, the ones like chlorinated solvents that sink to the bottom of the aquifer.
So from a layman's perspective, if you have an oil tank in your yard for your house and it leaked into the ground and got into the soil or the water below your house, you're just doing that on a big scale.
I do not on a huge scale.
Oil
Refinery
refineries,
scale,
all that kind of stuff, right?
Or yes. I wouldn't even do a gas station. It would be like oil refinery, oil terminals, usually, or oil pipeline leak.
Right.
You know, it could put 100,000 gallons, 1,000,000 gallons in the ground, that kind of deal.
And do you find your academic background in that area helps you with your farming?
Yeah, that's the thing about knowledge. Knowledge is leverageable, you know, so it doesn't matter what area you have your knowledge in. There is always the whole thought process. A lot of it you can always leverage in whatever space that you find yourself. Yeah.
When that well blew in the Gulf of Mexico, probably 10 years ago.
Right.
What were you thinking?
Holy shit. Yeah. Can I say that? Is it family?
No.
Dude, you're wrecking our podcast.
Yeah. So, but I didn't work on that one. I had the opportunity to, but most of my, I work in the subsurface. So like that was an on-water spell. So like I worked on, there was a big one in Kalamazoo, the Kalamazoo spill. That was around the same time or shortly around. I was involved with a couple million gallons. But I had the opportunity to go there, but I didn't think it was right for my skill set. And I didn't want to, I didn't think I could bring value to it. So
What do you think about fossil fuels in general? I mean, granted, they're part of your livelihood, but it's cleaning up the messes that they've caused.
Absolutely.
Part of your livelihood.
Absolutely.
Are you trying to work yourself out of a job?
Yes.
The right thing?
Right. Yeah, it's a job, and this is where we're at. I'm not sure. I don't think, is it a good thing? No, it's not. I don't think so. I think, but you know, that's the society we live in. It's driven by profit. The whole profit motive has gotten us here.
But he's not working himself out of a job. He's just cleaning up the mess that it's creating, right?
Right. I'm not in the processing or refining of oil or getting it out of the ground. It's just like there's enough contamination around, because once it gets into, I'm working on spills. I work on some sites that are 100 years old, and the oil comes out of the ground like it's fresh. So it depends on the condition under which it's in the ground. It doesn't degrade much at all. Sometimes if it's like well aerated, it may be it will degrade. But if it's like in a situation where it's confined, like confined groundwater, can have confined oil, it could stay there and be really fresh when they get out of the ground. So there are spills that's been I'm working on 100-year spills. I'm working on 1-year-old spills. So
when you get a spill, what do you do with it?
Well,
Bounty.
It's quicker.
I work a lot with attorneys, and the answer is always it depends. To those
so if
questions.
you find a spill and there's fresh oil, do they try to reuse it?
Yeah, you try to get it out of the ground, and then you try to use. You might send it to a recycler, and I'm not usually involved in that part of it. I'm usually
the big
involved.
deal. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the big deal is not so much if it's on the surface, if it's on soils, but if it makes it to groundwater.
In my case, if it makes it, well, once it's in the subsurface, because it may not make it to groundwater, but once it gets into the subsurface, it could partition to the vapor phase, to the soil gas. And that could, if you have the pathway, it could get into your basement, for example, and you could be breathing that stuff. It could get in your sumps and get up into your house. So yes, if it gets into the groundwater, that's one, because it impacts the groundwater you drink. But if it's in the subsurface any at all, it's a threat.
Even if it rains, it's going to get travel somewhere. Right?
Or you could have explosive vapors building up in a basement. That could I've seen that. You know, I've seen a house where you could light a match and it would support a flame in the basement.
Wow.
Because the vapors were coming through through the sidewalls.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Terence, for a residential homeowner, if they have a well on their property, but it's not for potable water, it's just say for irrigation, watering their lawn, maybe they have a garden. If they have little kids running around on their lawn and they have a garden on their property, do you feel that it's a worthwhile endeavor to have their well water checked?
Yes, it is. It is always a worthwhile endeavor, because even if you put that water in your pool, that's contaminated, and you're taking swimming in it every day, it's a low dosage, and you could get build up an acute response. You have the vapors that are transferring from the water to, if you put it on your vegetables, they're going to uptake some of that stuff. So yes, it's always a good idea. Even if you're not drinking the water, you can still be exposed. And still be impacted.
The kids come out of the pool soaked in like a black ink.
It's a good octopus. It's a telltale
Probably,
sign.
yeah. That's one of the things that could tip you off.
So here's a good story, right? So this is years ago when I was working with Terence, actually, and I get a call from my cousin who has a small well in their yard that they only use for irrigation, just like you said, Ed. And they said, "Hey, it smells or something not right about this. Can you come check it? You work for the EPA. Can you come check it out, right?" And so I go there, and we're testing and we're sampling water and trying to figure it out, and couldn't figure it out, right? So finally, I'm like, "Can we just open the well and take a look?" And it was this old well that the lid on it was a concrete slab, 5 foot in diameter, that weighed 200 pounds, and we needed six guys to move it. Hand dug well, right? That my uncle had cleaned out because they had stopped using it when he was a kid, and they'd filled it with garbage and stuff because it was a big hole in the ground. And then he dug it all out, cleaned it out, used it for irrigation. So we had like 5 or 6 guys over there. We pushed the lid off the well, and there's like 7 dead muskrats or rats or something in there.
I know exactly.
They had crawled in there and in the winter because it's warm. You get warmth, and they just fell in and drowned. Right. So we're thinking, groundwater contamination. What is this? Blah blah blah. Dead rats. Right. So you never know, right? But you can get to the source. It was easy, right? But if the 4 neighbors didn't show up and be like, "Hey, we can help you move that thing," we would have never been able to open it and figure it out.
You couldn't push a 200-pound slab?
I don't know how much it was, but when it's like a 4-inch thick, 5 foot diameter, they just don't move, right? They're just like yeah. So you never know what you're going to find, right?
Interrogate. So you got to interrogate and do some.
I don't know if there's a question, but with regards to cleaning up spills and oil on the surface, there are still places in this country where oil is issuing to the surface of the ground freely, naturally, not due to any type of spill. Not to name any places in particular, but deep in the canyons of the San Juan, on the third side canyon down from Mexican Hat, you can see it.
Yes.
What is that?
Good, bad? I mean...
Well, it's some of that is nature, right? I mean, this stuff is... or it could be... is it an oil-producing area? Because they cap the wells...
It's known for that.
Okay.
This particular area is so incredibly inaccessible that I don't think it's profitable to even get equipment into there. So the land is actually somewhat preserved.
Right. So what's the question?
I don't know. I don't really have a question.
He was like, is it good or bad?
It's some of that stuff is natural. You have natural seeps of oil. So that's just nature. So it is what it is. But if it's crude oil, yes, it's dangerous too, but not as bad as the refined product.
But if you're backpacking there and you get caught in a winter storm, you can just light it and have a fire, just like that.
So it could be good.
Right? Could be good.
There you go.
Yeah.
So
Terence, you can't light crude oil.
I have no idea.
Right out of the ground, can you?
Crude oil? Well, I'm not sure what the ignition point is, but once you get it up there, it will burn.
Okay, you may need to get it hotter than a match will burn.
Probably.
Okay,
yeah.
So you got to bring a can of map gas, a little torch, a little welding equipment, maybe, and make a fire.
I don't think anyone's carrying that when they're hiking.
No, but if you know where you're headed and feel like doing an experiment,
it may not find you again.
All right, so tell us about give us a project you worked on that's off the charts, like unbelievable, timeline, numbers, volumes, whatever it is, something that,
one of the most exciting projects I worked on was there was an oil spill. There are quite a number, but there's some on the litigation front, and then there's some on the actual engineering science front. The one on the engineering science front was they had a spill at the terminal at the Honolulu airport. It supplies the Honolulu airport.
So the first thing you said was, "Son of a bitch, I got to go to Hawaii."
Absolutely.
Life is tough.
Tough assignment. Somebody got to do it.
So you took one for the team.
I took one for the team. And I got a call. It was like a Friday evening like this, and I got a call, and they were like, "When can you get on the plane?" I'm like, "Tomorrow morning." And actually, I was in Edison. I was working in New Jersey, and I was in Edison on assignment. And I got the call, and I flew out there the next day, and it was like 100,000 gallons. They estimated that in the ground, and they're secondary. You know, because these oil terminals, they have secondary containment around the tanks, and it's usually above ground. In this case, the secondary containment was below ground. It was a slurry wall that was quote unquote keyed into clay at about, say, 4 foot depth, and the engineer the consulting engineer for the company was like, "Hey, we have a release here, and the water is like 100 feet away, but we have this slurry wall," and they had a trench in the ground, and he took up a piece of clay, and it was like, "It's a fat clay, and nothing can get through this." And I'm like, "That may be true, but why don't you prove that to me? Put some holes down gradient of your facility, outside of your slurry wall, and if it comes up clean, then I'm out of here."
Right.
And I almost messed up because there were some garbage close to the wall from the
Cleanup?
No. They had this what do you call it now? The tsunami a couple of years ago in the Philippines that brought a lot of like boats and stuff. So you couldn't get to within 30 feet of the slurry wall. It actually had a wall and a slurry wall. So I was like, rather than say, guys, hey.
So wait, where was the spill reported? In the ocean? And they were just...
No, they had if you have a spill on land, you have to report to the authorities.
Right.
If you want to do
where was the spill that got reported?
It was on the terminal itself.
Okay.
Don't touch the table.
It was at the terminal itself, and the ocean was like, say, 100 feet or so away. So you had a race against time if it got out,
right,
just to prevent it from getting.
Okay, and so you're thinking, hey, the spill is one thing, but you still may be leaking through this wall too.
One thing I know about natural materials, they're heterogeneous. So the fact that you show me a piece of clay that looks homogeneous means nothing to me. And you're right next to the ocean where there's going to be a lot of, it's going to be coralline environment. So the chance for heterogeneity is pretty high. And the clay, even if it's homogeneous, it could be fractured.
Yeah.
So prove to me, prove your concept, prove your theory, prove your conceptual model is right. So he put in a couple of holes that were like 30 feet away from the facility because of the garbage, and they came up clean, right? And we were walking down there. We were using like air knife, to that vacuum, to super suckers.
How deep? What size?
They were like about 8 inches in diameter, using those vacuum super suckers to suck it out. And it was about 2 feet to water because you're right next to the ocean. And by the time we could walk down there, and they were all happy they didn't find anything. By the time we got down there, they put in the third hole, and it had like an 8-inch hole, and it had like 8 inches of oil already in it.
Wow.
And I lucked out because if that third hole had come up clean, that was the last hole, I would have gone on the plane, and then a few days later, we'd have a breakthrough.
Right.
And then I wouldn't look so good. And so I was like, hey guys, move the garbage and get as close as you can to your slurry wall. And every hole had like oil, had like a foot or more of oil in it. So that's when they were like, okay, we give up. It's out. We had a race against time now to prevent it from breaking through. And we worked hard at it, and nothing got into the river.
So how did it initially seep out? Was it an accident? How did it?
And maybe you could also explain to others what a slurry wall is.
Okay, yes. A slurry wall is an impermeable layer that it's usually made of like clays. So like natural materials are permeable, so fluid can flow through it. But if you put enough fine material in it, like clays, in a wall, it was about a 6-inch thick wall, and the perimeter around the facility was about 4 miles. So it went about 4 miles around the facility down to a depth. So it was poured in like liquid as they liquefy the clay and pour it in there. And
so that's why you call it a slurry wall. They make a slurry out of the clay, and
absolutely.
So you're pouring it like concrete.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then it sets up over time. So
then, how did the spill happen?
How did the spill happen initially?
So this facility has a capacity of like 50-something gallons of to hold 50-something gallons of oil. Huge tanks, 6 million gallon tanks, 50 feet tall, maybe 50 inches in diameter.
Is it a refinery or processing
No,
or transfer station?
it's a terminal. So they supply all the jet fuel for the. I don't know if you've been to Honolulu. That airport is very busy. So they use probably maybe 1 million gallons of jet fuel a day to refuel the airlines, the flights. So it's a storage facility, and then it shipped by pipe. It's piped to the airport and trucks probably. I'm not sure, but maybe pipes and then trucks take it to the plane. But they had a leak in one of the tanks, one of the 6 million gallon tanks. And imagine you have that kind of head, 50 foot of head driving that oil. But the thing about
Pressure
these tanks,
for non-engineers.
right. The thing about these tanks is that even though you could say it's a 6 million, with temperature changes, just the change in the volume alone. So you might say, okay, I lost 10,000 gallons today, but you cannot tell if that is, when you do your that just could be changes due to temperature expansion and contraction in the size of your tank. So even though they were losing oil, it was hard for them to, it's not so hard, even though when you do your reconciliation with volume in, volume out, if it's within a certain threshold, you just say, okay, that could be error, measurement error. So eventually they suspected that it was, that they were having a leak. And then after maybe like about a month, they could verify that they were having a leak.
All right, so this was not a catastrophic leak. This was, hey, we notice our numbers are getting a little weird over time.
Right.
Maybe we have a leak that's been going on for unknown amount of time. Okay,
right.
gotcha.
For like a month or so. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. And so that's when they reported it. But the slurry wall was supposed to be able to, their design, their engineering system was able to withstand. That's why. Like a release of like 6 million gallons, and you had 100,000 gallons that got out.
Wow.
So I wouldn't want.
Did you find the breach in the slurry wall?
No, because the breach was never in the slurry wall. It was in the clay that the slurry wall was keyed into. It was heterogeneous.
Okay, they didn't. So if they would have went deeper,
you could.
They might have been okay.
It was a bad idea to begin with.
Yeah.
You were never going to be okay, and I thought it was a bad idea to begin with.
Is it clay because it was cheaper?
Because you're keen into natural materials. It's always. It's always. You need to tie my hands next time because I gesticulate a lot. But it's always, in my opinion, and you read this a lot in the literature, that you try to key things into heterogeneous, into clays and stuff like that. It's always been a bad idea from my experience. So just because the clay, natural materials, heterogeneous material is engineered. Natural materials are not.
Interesting. Structurally, it's fine. That's how you do building foundations.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about
fluids,
mobile fluids,
when you talk about fluids,
I didn't even know
trust.
That was the idea. So these were, what was the density of what they were storing? Were these like floaters?
It's floaters, but that's the thing about it. Oil floats in that bottle that you have in front of you. If you put some oil in it, floats in it. But if you put some oil in, because the oil has weight, so if it had somewhere to go, it would have pushed some of that water out. Right. In the subsurface, it has, because of that.
Yeah, and you've also got capillary action that's going to move it. Yeah.
Right. So in principle, say if your clay layer is, say, at 3 feet, and your oil just say you had 4 feet of oil going there, it's going to displace the 3 feet of water that's there, if it can push it somewhere else, right? So now you have oil sitting against the bottom of your against your impermeable layer.
So when was this designed originally?
It was like about 2006, and I think the spill was like sometimes 2000.
So 2006 that's pretty
fairly
recent.
Yes,
design.
Yes.
And this
was a big engineering firm. I mean, a 4 mile long impermeable. And these engineers they put a report that was pretty good.
One of the big firms.
It's one of the big firms.
We would know the name. You don't have to say it.
One of the big firms.
And presumably permitted by Hawaii's equivalent of the DEP or something.
Yes. And I'm not sure how that's settled, but I'm of the opinion that it didn't work out so well for that engineering firm. Because if you give the assurance that this is good for a release of 6 million gallon, and you say your permeability of it doesn't matter how small your permeability of retaining wall is, if the material is keyed into is not as, it has imperfections, and natural materials always have imperfections, and some scale. That's the thing. They sample that at a certain scale. and into the natural material, and what they found was heterogeneous. But was homogeneous. But if your heterogeneity is on a scale that's finer than your sampling space, you may not see it.
I have a question for you, Terence. A couple of years ago, I was reading an article about the best states to retire in, and Nevada was listed in the top 2. And I went there for the first time last year, and I really liked it. How do you feel the real estate market is? And if someone's looking to either get investment property there, or thinking of relocating for retirement, what are your thoughts from your experience living in Nevada?
The real estate market is good from the perspective that it's not as expensive as everywhere else. Every other city, probably, every other major city.
That's because it's come down, right? It had its
kind of boom and bust. It has its boom and bust, but it never boomed like it did here.
How long have you lived there?
I've lived there 20 years.
I'm assuming since you're there still, you like it?
No.
I like it. So what are some of the down things?
It's too hot for him.
You are going to be so corrupted if you go to Vegas.
Well,
you're like the shining soul of this group.
But I really liked
Nevada.
it.
He said Nevada.
No, but we went to Vegas, but I loved it because...
Right, what do you think? You could go to Reno?
No, because
there's nothing else outside of Nevada.
There's so many...
Outside of Las Vegas, there's nothing else.
There's so many things to do there. And if you don't have an
Yeah.
issue with a lot of the pitfalls that they offer down there, it's great. There were so many things to do. I love the canyons. It was totally different than hiking around here in the East Coast. I love the fact that because I happen to be a guy that perspires a lot, being that there was low humidity, I wasn't all soggy.
Amen, brother.
I wasn't a soggy guy like I normally am. So I thought it was great. It was a totally different experience, and I just wanted to see how you felt about it. Being that
I think it's different strokes for different folks. Visiting there is one thing, and I've visited there before on a couple of occasions before I lived there, but. It just doesn't suit my personality.
So, what are you planning on moving out of there at some point?
Yes, once I retire, I'm out of there.
How many
This
years?
is all about retirement and setting
maybe 2
yourselves
years.
up. So, when is that? 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years. Somewhere thereabouts. Yeah.
And is there any issues? Someone had told me, because we're thinking about investment property, someone had mentioned to me, if you think about an investment property there, that might have an issue with water long term.
Water is a big problem in Vegas because without the Hoover Dam, Vegas wouldn't be possible. You got to have water. So and the lake mead that it creates behind there. And the capacity of Lake Mead, I would just guess off the top of my head, it's probably 40% or so of design capacity, and it's falling. So, and then it, so you get 2 things from the lake. You get the hydroelectricity, and then you get the water for residential use. And I think if it drops, I don't know if it's like another 40 feet or so, it's like a dead
I think
pool.
it's much less than 40% of capacity.
Okay.
And it's just one of, I believe, 7 major dams on the Colorado River, which is why it hasn't made it to the ocean, really in our lifetime. So you can move there and add to the problem.
or you can move there and play golf and make it even worse.
Make it even worse,
They are required to reuse a lot of water. Most of your golf course water is reused on its second or third pass. But Vegas, as we know it now, wouldn't be possible, obviously, without the Colorado River. It wouldn't even be possible without the reuse that is being done.
So is there long-term solutions for those folks that are out there?
Yeah, reduction in population.
It's just not sustainable.
Not sustainable.
Just not sustainable. And
Pictures of Lake Mead are horrible.
yeah. And they're building more houses. It's a profit motive. It's not rational. It's not science. The science is clear. The whole idea of, when you design these systems, you look at historical data and to design the system, thinking that history is going to repeat itself. But as we're finding out, history doesn't always repeat itself, not with the climate anyway. It's not repeating itself.
In addition to that, this was the Colorado River Compact in 1921 was based on some particularly wet years. So not only was it 100 years ago, but it was wet for then.
How do you know this date?
Skewed data.
He knows all dates.
Yeah. Yes.
So real quick, not to change the subject, but sort of make it more specific to you. Behind you, there's the control room, and he said 10 minutes. So we have,
I think in 10 seconds,
8 minutes. But the foundation of this initially was like retirement, economics, doing stuff so that you could either retire early or give people advice on the correct things to do with money. Obviously, you said that you you said you're retiring, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything specific that you did to retire at the age you're doing? Is there any type of knowledge to that subject that you may want other people to know?
First thing, I'm not as young as I look.
For folks who are listening and can't see TJ,
he's 95.
You finally have a hint of being maybe 40 because I just saw a little bit of gray on top, but
You look pretty young to me.
60 plus.
60 plus, get out of here.
You look great, man.
Thanks.
What else you doing right, man?
I go to the gym every other day. I
now
try
you
and
know
back
why I
in the
married
gym. I've
Jennifer.
always been an avid gym guy. That's how we on one of the levels we connected was going to the gym back in the day. And Ray taught me a lot of, speaking about retirement, Ray taught me a lot about, taught me about money actually. Because when I started working, I remember we used to hang out, and he was like in his early 20s, and I was probably early 30s, and I was like, and we would talk about stuff, and he was like, I have like, I think it was like $20,000 in his investment, and that was I was like, holy cow, you're younger than me.
And Terence was making double my salary.
I was making, and I was like, how does this work out? What's going? What are you doing? But I'm a humble guy, so I was like, hey, teach me, tell me what you're doing. And he started bringing me money magazines. It's after and I would read them, and I started buying mutual funds and stuff like that. And then we started dabbling in the stock market and stuff like that. So,
you bought a couple books on some weird website one time. Remember that?
Yes, yeah.
Amazon.
And to
yes,
Terence's credit,
Amazon.
I still remember you picked Qualcomm in 1996.
Qualcomm,
my friend. Still on?
yes. And so then we started. So I get to a level where it was an even exchange, So, so with some humility, he's the one who got me here in that, and I've saved that. So I'm prepared for retirement.
What does it look like? Describe your retirement in a couple of sentences.
I have no idea. Over the next 2 years, I'll probably try and figure it out. I do enjoy my job, though. I do enjoy working.
So don't retire.
Yeah. So there's no.
But you can enjoy and still not want to do it.
I still want to do it.
How about after? So like when you retire, are you going to like literally retire, or do you have a secondary plan?
Goats. It's all about the goats.
It's gonna. Yeah, I'll probably do something.
Where are
with
you
the
going to
goats.
move to?
I'd probably move back to the East Coast. I'd buy a property in the East Coast, and then
Because it's less expensive here.
Yeah, right. Not in Vegas. No, Vegas it's way more expensive here than Vegas. I thought, you're being tongue in cheek in that one. It depends on where you're moving from the West Coast. Like California is way more expensive than the East Coast. But I would get a property out here and also get a property in Jamaica and move between both of them. So there are things that like I say, knowledge is leverageable. I don't have to be in the environmental space, although there are opportunities there. There's one company that I'm working on that same spill in Honolulu. The same geologist who showed me that fat piece of clay. He's a principal. He's a principal at AECOM, and not
small
AECOM,
engineering company.
ERM. He's a principal at ERM. I work, and he's offered me a job. He said, whenever you leave the EPA, just let me know. So there are those opportunities out there. I've done a lot.
So he's not going to retire.
So will you
Nothing
would
wrong with that.
consider that
Yeah. Nothing
and
wrong with it if you
retire
like
because
it.
it's more lucrative, or why not just keep
No, it
working
was
where
not.
you're at?
It would not be for money.
But if you work for EPA, that's a government job, correct?
Yes,
So you
yes.
have a retirement package.
I have a retirement plan, and we also have a thrift savings, which is like a 401k, and they contribute up to 5% of.
So there's no pension?
We have pension. We have a pension.
Are you fully
on top
vested
of-
into your...
Yes. Yes.
You could leave now.
I could leave now. Yes, I could leave now. And I also have a thrift saving plan that I put money into, and they put like 5% matching into that in addition to that.
That's nice.
And I qualify for Social Security as well. So
Nice. You heard of
well,
Tiger
wait.
King?
Plus,
Goat
right?
King right here, baby.
That's our plan right here. So that's
just the goat.
He is the goat, right? Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, so Terence,
Yes.
this was an opportunistic time for you to be in town and for us to be recording tonight, so we really appreciate you coming.
I appreciate it.
And I don't know if we're going to get, very many more goat farming, hydrogeologists, PhD investors on this show.
Actually, I canceled the 3 that we had because this was very good.
If you have nightmares about macheting a goat tonight,
if you're back in town and we do this on a Sunday, usually after this, you go downstairs, we have food, and there's a lot of activities.
Awesome. Well,
Get a goat.
And we'll get a goat.
Some goat.
I just come hang out.
We could do it.
Yeah, without. I come and hang out for the food and the alcohol. Right?
Yeah.
we didn't say anything about alcohol.
Yes, we did.
I see. I took a look. I see what's going on there. I'm observant.
Not too much, otherwise you hit the slurry wall.
Thank you for listening to the Attic Static Podcast. If you like what you heard, please like and subscribe, and feel free to leave a comment below. Or come check us out at our website at atticstaticpod.com. And stay tuned for new episodes out every Monday.